All right, let's get started. So, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you from whichever part of the world you're joining us. I hope all of you are healthy and staying safe. My name is Praveen. I lead marketing at BrowserStack, and I'm really excited to kick off the first session for BrowserStack Originals. We're going to have our co-founders, Ritesh Arora and Nakul Aggarwal, talk about the stories that and the sort of challenges they faced while building BrowserStack and scaling from day one to where we are now, 9 years later. So Ritesh and Nakul are serial entrepreneurs. They met while they were buddies in college at IIT Bombay, and prior to BrowserStack, they started many other companies. They started QuackRank, and they also started Downcase. And when they were basically building their website for Downcase, they found testing their website a huge struggle, and that led them to the inspiration to start BrowserStack. So BrowserStack was started 9 years ago, right out of a coffee shop here in Mumbai. And Ritesh and Nakul basically launched BrowserStack to support testing on one browser, which was Internet Explorer back in the day when IE was still huge. And within 6 months, BrowserStack had 1,000 paying customers. And now, 9 years later, here we are. We have 2 million plus registered users, 25,000 plus paying customers across 135 countries. Our customers include industry leaders like Microsoft, Twitter, Spotify, ESPN, MasterCard, and many more. With the trust of these customers, we've become the de facto testing platform for enterprises. Over the last 9 years, BrowserStack has also grown to over 600 employees in 4 different offices across San Francisco, New York, Mumbai, and Dublin. So with that introduction, I'm going to basically structure this session into 3 parts. So the first part, we'll talk about sort of the origins and the early days of BrowserStack, going from, let's say, Ritesh Nakul, the first 2 employees to 100. And then we'll go into sort of the growth and scale stage, which is going to be from 100 to 600. And then we'll end with just a few closing comments from Ritesh and Nakul. All right, great. Let's get started. I'm excited.
Thanks, Praveen. You just reminded me of the old days.
Yeah.
Nakul and I working out of a coffee shop, quick decisions, quick kind of software building, quick iterations. But again, like nostalgia, right? So yeah, let's get started.
Awesome. Great. So Ritesh, I think the first question is for you. We launched BrowserStack with just BrowserStack Live, right? And can you tell us a little bit about how did you think about achieving product market fit with the first product that you launched?
Right. So I think there is a bit of a history to that. So I'll cover that part first,
Sure.
And then answer it. It will become more obvious. So as you said, like before we started BrowserStack, we tried our hands on a lot of ideas, probably over 20 ideas, and we failed on almost all of them. But there are a few important learnings we had. That it's not the idea, it's the customer, it's their problem, and it's the market that matters. And being developers, you have a habit and neck of like just starting building something very quick, and you don't think about the customer market. So I think the first time we encountered the problem of testing on IE browsers, this time we decided, hey, look, we're just going to hold ourselves back. We're not going to write code. First month, we're just going to probably do a research and analysis of understanding customers, market, what their problems are. I know it was like really difficult for Nakul. I can't imagine him like at that period, like not even coding for 1 day, and I have to hold him back for like a month. And I think we did that for the first 1 month. And I think it was to our surprise then where we found every day there were like hundreds of users sharing their problems and complaining about how difficult it was to test on the IE browser or different browsers back then. And not just like one place, everywhere on the internet. You go to we went to Stack Overflow, Twitter, like different forums. I think we were surprised a bit, like that, hey, look, we didn't realize this was such a big problem. And then our second thing was like, the second part of the launch was, towards the launch was, hey, look, you build fast, fail fast, right? If we have hit a wrong problem, then we better know it early than probably later, because we are actually investing our career into this, right? So we decided, hey, look, we have 6 months, right? 4 months to beta. You pick up like those features that you can actually build and ship in 4 months. Beta version, free for everyone. The only thing we want to get is like get customer feedback. 2 months we'll take it to the market. We'll keep iterating. After 6 months, so 4+2, we'll probably make a decision that, hey, do we want to do this long term? Do I want to invest my next 2 years building this? So 4 months, we actually pretty much almost did it in the 4 months.
In 3.5.
3.5, like, so see Nakul's kind of developer ego there. So almost 3.5 months. And I think it was like really like trimmed down product. I don't even think so it was a product. It was just made like a quick tool that we want to give instant access of the IE browser to the developers and just let them open their website. That's it. Like
and that's how you said it was a tool. See, the product guys are never happy. No matter what it is, like it's not good enough.
So we took it to the market. We reached out to the same set of users who were actually sharing their experience of having this problem. And we got some traction from industry thought leaders. And some of them I still remember was like, hey, this is one of the important problems that's stopping the internet to grow, right? Because we are not able to make applications which are bug-free and work across different browsers. And within a month, we had over 10,000 beta users. I think we were going viral at that time. We were like the next big thing that is coming in. And I think that was the moment of time when we realized, hey, we probably landed on something. There is a product market fit there. And there's another thing. I think they were, even to an extent, I think some of them were asking for a paid version of the product. They actually wanted to pay for it. And that actually gave us an encouragement that, hey, look, why don't we just start charging for the product, right? We always were free for almost a month or so. But now if I look back, I think the tool was so bad. They thought that if they get an ability to pay for it, like they probably might get a better service, right?
Great. And I think a quick follow-up there, Ritesh. Traditionally in the Indian context, startups typically start and they try to address problems that they're familiar with, maybe in the Indian market, right? In this case, BrowserStack was very unique in that you immediately had customers from all over the world, right? Can you tell us a little bit about sort of how you thought about that and how did you approach this?
Yeah, I like it how you said it. Like you probably like find problems which you are familiar with, the world you live in. I think Nakul and I were like, when we were developers, we were always global. I think it's the internet that doesn't draws the lines and the boundaries of which country you belong to, right? So we just like learned so much on the internet. We always adapted like new technologies. We were one of the first ones to adopt, I would say, like Ruby on Rails. We were one of the first ones to actually use AWS in the country. And not just like one service, like sitting in India, we were using their all global locations, probably like 7 of their services at a large scale and 2 of us sitting from a coffee shop, right? So I think as a developer, we always thought global. We never even thought about like, hey, we are sitting in India, right? So I think that probably led to like solving a global problem. It just happened. I think we never wanted to do it.
Sure.
And also, I think we were so much in technology all the time, like reading about it, or we were very excited about startups. Obviously, we did 2 of them. So we were always reading so much about what the world is doing and how people are solving problems. We were interested in technology and the new startups coming up. And that led to our vision always about what the US is like, what the world is doing, and not necessarily what India is doing.
Sure.
We have so much in technology all the time. We were only thought about technology problems. All our 3 problems are pure technology problems.
Yeah. It was surprising, like, because we always ended up solving tech problems.
Sure.
Like we read so much about tech, and we were so deep into that. Like it just came very natural to us.
Awesome. So speaking of tech, Nakul, I think that same sort of story of the first 3 months. Tell us about some of the engineering challenges that you faced, right? Sure. As the only engineer, I'm not sure, Ritesh, how much development you did.
I did. I'm sure like I was his number one challenge to manage.
No, I think back then you were much easier, but anyways. Yeah, I think I think the biggest problem was releasing it in 3 months. We set a target for 3 months and we had a 1 month buffer to make sure in case any surprise happened. Given our last experience, both the first two ones took us 8 months. And we learned from it that we want to really fail fast this time, because an year of trial and 6 months of investing in further, it just takes a lot of time to waste. Like not waste, but get an output, yes or no out of it. So I think that was the biggest challenge. On the tech side, double clicking, I think Windows platform was a big challenge. EC2 was fairly new in 2011 with Windows platform themselves, and there was no good solutions around how do you containerize and things like that. So we had to build our own stack around it. Streaming was the second biggest problem. I think we tried a lot of solutions. Browsers were not so much around streaming as well back then. So we were left with VNC back then. And then the only tech available was either Flash or Applet. And both of us like, are you serious? There is no better solution than this. And Apple was already thinking about like showing very horror, notifications, enable Java applet, enable Flash. Do you want to all that stories were like, we were really sure this is the worst technology choice we could make, but that was the best one for our problem at that point of time. So I think we went with Java because Java was much more performant, and in the remote interaction and streaming problem, I think the performance really mattered a lot. So we went with Java applets, and we got huge number of complaints from customers. And believe me, like I have spent late nights debugging people's applets, enabling in their configurations and their systems. So that was the second one. And third one, I think making this all automated in a fashion that we could boot dynamically. We were paying from our own pockets. He wanted in all the location servers because he wanted like really responsive, as much latency we could reduce. And I was like, this is not possible. He said, that's not my problem. That's your problem, right? I want this, right? And I was like, okay, it's okay. Take a deep breath and let's find an answer. So I think we probably figured out good solutions. I think he figured out a good algorithm on how we should boot where and how we should do it. And I think some of the technology optimizations I did from my side. So I think we could probably do a decent job. I think we could probably, yeah.
I'll actually add to that, right? So the last one Nakul said, like, so we were like, hey, it's an infrastructure business we have, right? So whatever we have to spend, it's from our own pockets. So I can't just have the machines running all the time because I'm just going to run out of cash in like 2 months. So how do I? It's like innovation happens when you have scarcity. Like, so I figured out like, hey, look, if a user hits our website, I'll probably have about a minute before they start a session. So I have some time, and usually a user would probably follow the sun. You won't do testing most of the times late nights. You'll probably do in the daytime when you're working. So just basis on that, we came up with a predictive algorithm that, hey, look, at any given time in this region, if I have these many machines running, which is very optimal, I should be
great. Wow. Okay.
So we came up with that. And I think actually, Nakul, like just to add to one more problem, I think was connecting networks. Most of the time, developers are testing like internal, private, not public yet versions of their website. So how to enable them to test that was a lot of work we did around that.
Internal, local tunnel.
Local tunnel, yeah.
I think now he reminded me, I think he was also a bigger problem for me. Every time he'll give me a Photoshop PSD to implement in the UI, I would probably implement it. It's like, no, this is not same as mine. There's 1 pixel is broken there. There's 1 pixel is broken there. Like 1 pixel, I can't even make out 1 pixel difference. He's like, no, I can see it. This is wrong. Like I know you have worked with them for product as well. It is so such a pain.
So now we have visual testing to help solve this problem.
Nakul, I'm much better now.
Where is Lokesh?
Awesome. So I think speaking of staying in that theme of like solving really tough engineering problems, right? I remember when I sort of first used BrowserStack, it was a magical experience to understand. Like when I got the realization that I was actually testing on a real mobile device. Right, it just like felt very magical, and I was like, how are you guys figuring this out? How is this happening? And I think for you as an engineer, like how do you go about solving something like that, where you can't just like look up Stack Overflow or Google an answer? And
we don't. Like first time he told me you want to do mobile, I was like, this is not possible. No one has. Are you kidding me? And he said, okay, sleep over it. We'll talk tomorrow. Next day, same discussion. Next day, same discussion. We had a fight for a week over it, and he's like, okay, Nakul, understand it this way. This business is going to grow if you give me mobile, otherwise it's going to nowhere. I was like, oh, this is that serious. Okay. And I was like, okay, let me figure it out. So we started in 2013, I think, first shot, and it probably failed miserably. probably engineers who were working on it also left because it was such a difficult problem.
We actually had like our best of the engineers leave because this is like such a difficult problem to solve that they were not able to generate any output after 3 months, 6 months.
I think once we got to a decent enough engineering size, then we had a dedicated team after that. First, they were doing desktop and mobile together. I think then probably we started solving problem one by one. I had a dedicated focus on solving this problem itself. Streaming was the biggest challenge. I think a lot of plethora of challenges. Each of them took 3 months, I think, to get the first version out, which you could give to customers. So the first version out was 9 months, and he made us do for another 6 months to make sure he is happy with it. And then, of course, there are then customer iterations as well. So the streaming, I think, making sure we could host them, making sure we could probably give them internet or Wi-Fi, and then scaling challenges. They had to be figured out how they're charging and all those things. I think so much engineering I have read in those 1 year. Most frustrating year of my life from engineering perspective. But I think if I look back a year later when we had this on production, and it was the most gratifying solution. Like all the things I read today, people are doing these automated cars or things like that. I feel that the problem was so tough back then, given the technology available and how the whole engineering team built it. And it really felt like, I still sometimes when I tell these stories like this, I feel like goosebumps, like, oh yes, we have done this. Like, we actually solved a problem which no one else could do. I know a lot of startups which tried and failed miserably, and our engineering team could do it. And they just, I think it's magic, actually magical.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I still find it very magical today. Every time I start a test. Awesome. So I think Ritesh, next question is sort of around product strategy at BrowserStack, right? I think I've been part of the product team, and I know that we're very deliberate about launching new products, right? One of our key products today is Automate, right? Yeah. But we launched it only a few years after BrowserStack was started. So help us understand, what was your thought process? What was the trigger that led you and Nakul to think about, okay, now is the time to build this kind of product?
Sure. So I think we follow like frameworks, right? So the way I think, can I build like a big business on this product? If I can't build a big business, I don't want to do it because there's always an opportunity cost around it, right? So, and to make sure you can build a big business, like, is there a big market, right? Is the problem with the high intensity out there, right? Is it an active problem that a lot of users in that market face that and are looking for a solution? I think that's my like basic first level checklist to it, right? And then the second thing we need to look into is like, hey, fine, you can build a great business around this product, but does it belongs to BrowserStack, right? What are the synergies we can bring in from integrating two products, our existing products in this new product, which probably gives us a unique advantage? Can we have the same go-to-market motions? Are we selling this product or solving the problem for the same persona, same buyer? I think those are the things that goes into our mind while we think about adding new product. I think how Automate happened more specifically was, so back then, I think 2 years in, just the live product, like evolution of live product is happening pretty much every 6 months. And we had a constant rhythm to it, like look into customer support, take the top 10 feedback, that's your roadmap, go solve it, right? So to our surprise, like we did this thing, we got a customer support, we look into the feature requests they were asking, and back then we had about like 10,000 paying customers. So you probably get a lot of customer feedback, right? So, and to my surprise, Automate testing was the number one in the list, and that was like way ahead by a margin from the number 2, number 3, number 4. And I think it's our customers who actually pushed us to launch the Automate product. Like it was not natural to us because we didn't come from like a strong DevOps background that we would actually build a CI/CD pipeline and so on. We never did it before, right? So, but I think there was a unique advantage for us to solve this. Like what customers were asking, hey, look, you have a large infrastructure globally. You're already providing this for like manual testing for different browsers and different platforms. Can we just use your infrastructure to run our like automated test, right? So I think it gave us a unique advantage that our USP can be used. It's the same problem and probably to the same user as well. Hence, we probably made a decision. And I think now I look back, probably like probably one of the best things to happen to us. Like Automate products are like over 70% of our revenue now. So,
yeah, it's a product very near and dear to my heart. I started out in auto.
you started
as a
yes,
product manager, so
yes.
yes, yeah, great, awesome. All right, let's move on. So I think we covered sort of the first phase of BrowserStack, right? Sort of the origins and the first couple of years. Now I want to sort of get into the next phase where we decided to sort of grow and Blitzscale, right? And we grew from around 100 when I joined. Now we're 600 plus employees. So I think Ritesh, a question. I guess a question for both of you, right? Maybe Ritesh, you can talk about. What was number one? What was the trigger for this growth? Right? When did you decide? Okay, now is the time. We need to Blitzscale. We need to really grow rapidly. And how did you sort of think about growth for all these sort of corresponding functions, right? Product, marketing, sales, and Nakul, maybe you can talk about engineering.
Sure. So I think we started asking a question to ourselves, like, hey, what's the end game? Right? We have found a strong product market fit. We're just growing on its own, and what we are doing is just basically kind of providing support to a massive scale up that's happening virally. I think, and we had a realization that probably if we really want to do a justice to what we have built, we want to make sure like everyone is using this who needs it. Like every application is probably testing on BrowserStack platform. And to make that happen, I think we probably adopted the philosophy of Blitzscale, which probably says that, hey, look, if you have a product market fit and if you don't go fast, there is someone else who's going to do it. Or people are going to find some other solution to solve their problem. The choice is yours, that do you want to be the first one for the market to adopt?
Sure.
Right? So, and the first mover has a unique advantage because it's not easy to kind of replace. It gives you a competitive advantage as well. So I think that's the thought process. So we have a great market, really big, like a strong problem to solve that we are solving. We have a product market fit. We have all the resources. I think it's in our hands to make sure we actually achieve our dreams, and hence the Blitzscaling. I think principally, when you scale up, I think it's a different journey altogether. Like starting, I'd probably say like if you're a serial entrepreneur and you know how to like start up, scaling up is like a completely different learning, science, and everything is different. And I think there needs the few principles that I follow, which might be like, can it be applied to any function? I think the number one is clarity. If there is a clarity around like, hey, what is our areas of responsibilities? Like, can we measure it? Can we probably align it to the business goals, to the end customer, right? What value am I adding to the end customer, right? So I think that clarity, and then probably can we split into smaller units, and each unit is an isolated startup, right? Which is solving a problem for the customer. I think those are like the generalized principles we follow.
Sure.
I think I'll have Nakul answer the engineering, but on the sales and marketing side, I think we are making an attempt to understand our market as much as we can. There is a constant learning that's happening. We are prioritizing which part of the market we should go after, and how do we structure and organize ourselves, right? What is an organization we should build to go after the market in a manner that we are very productive, we can scale fast, and we have a happy organization that thinks that's kind of winning.
Awesome.
Yeah, about engineering, I think it's probably 2015. Someone told me scaling comes down to three pieces, which is people, process, and systems. And I suppose I probably laughed at it back then. Now I probably understand what he meant to say. So I think probably people, the biggest challenge in scaling was myself. I was not ready to scale only. I was like totally denial, like I don't want to scale, I want to do engineering only. I think probably that was the biggest challenge in probably our engineering scaling, I would say. Once I figured it out, then I figured out my best people who would like really, I think has built BrowserStack or helped us solve most of the problems, get them through that curve. First I got through it. And I think, and the third, of course, hiring more related talent so that we could probably grow aggressively. So I think that was people piece. Processes, I think there's a lot of like things you need to reinvent. Let's say the communication, right? When you're 10 people sitting across a thing is like, everyone knows what is going on. At 100, you can manage. 600 is different ball game altogether on communication, right? I realize the value of communication needs to evolve, transparency needs to evolve as well. Like that, how you set OKRs and goals, everyone knows what the company is doing. Okay, this is the revenue, everyone knows. Now you set OKRs, even if you have a publicly listed OKRs, half of the people still don't know the company have OKRs, right? So how do you constantly nudge people, remind people and everything, right? So communication, transparency, onboarding, once you start aggressively started hiring, make sure people understand the principles of the business. It's not just about engineering, right? They need to know what the company does, right? They need to align to the company goals and the company vision. Engineering is a way to get there, right?
Sure.
So how do we connect those dots and make sure engineers understand those things during the onboarding process? So we do spend extensive time on onboarding in our company. I think just to make sure people have a great experience while onboarding, so that they connect why we do things and how we do things. I think third is the metrics. I think we were always very, very fussy about metrics since beginning, but I think of course system needs to evolve as well. At senior people, the metrics also needs to change, right? You need to have a L1 metrics and all two metrics and all those things, which I probably again loved when 2015. I think I do all of those things now. But I think it brings a lot of clarity to people. A lot of we could just say, this is guys where we want to be, this is the revenue we want to hit, this is the leads we want to generate, this is the NPS of product, and then the team solves the problem itself because they know this is what they need to achieve, rather than having a subjective argument over smaller things. I think so I think processes help from that perspective, and then systems, of course, too. A lot of these things are very people driven. How do we make sure the systems are driving these things rather than humans driving, and people are actually solving next level of problems than just doing these things again and again.
Sure.
I think these are three pieces I would say technically we had to solve. Even in engineering, I know it sounds like as a company level thing, but the same thing is in engineering as well. And I think we're in much better stage. Of course, there's a long way to go, but
I think scale principles pretty much apply every function. They just take different shape and form, but I think it's pretty much the same.
Sure. And I think, Ritesh, you alluded to this a little bit earlier in your response about sort of breaking up teams into smaller units and maintaining, sort of building them as startups individually, right? So I think maybe this is a question for both of you. Is as you scale from 100 to 600. How do you maintain that agility of a startup, right? Quick decision making, not letting it become a bureaucracy, so to speak, right? Tell us a little bit about how you think about that.
A good one. I think once you as a company are growing very fast, I think you need to get a lot of processes in place to get the order to the house, right? Or it's too chaotic. You end up repeating yourself, you're doing the same thing again, the output really diminishes. But then once you get processes, you see the value of having processes, you just start doubling down on processes, right? And you reach a point where you realize, oh shit, I think we probably have too many of them, and probably a lot of them are not worth it, right? So I think we are probably as a company going through a phase where I'm quite actively trying to remove processes or simplify them and at least remove subjectivity out of it. You want everyone in the company to spend more than 90% of their time in probably taking the company forward, like in making us better to solve customer problem. I think that's kind of my way of measuring that, hey, which part of the organization, where does it stand, right? So, but you're right. I think it's we're in the process of kind of making it more streamlined now.
Got it. And I think, so just staying on this theme of scaling, Nakul, I know you talked about scaling the engineering organization, but I think a great sort of question in everybody's mind, right? Like every engineer's mind is, we went from, now we're at 2 million plus registered users, millions of tests run on our platform every day, right? So how did you, think about scaling the engineering platform, right? Maybe talk about some of the key moments there and your journey there.
Sure. So I think it's in the tech business, I'm sure it's on business. I think you have to constantly keep evolving yourself, to keep innovating. I think even with the business we are in, I think we constantly require constant R&D all the time. So we have to figure out a structure where we could do decentralized R&D across the places. For example, the live product constantly wants like better performance, right? Product manager says like only thing we want is make it faster, right? And it's like I solve the same problem last year. That's what the customer wants. They want to like the Google search, right? Like only thing Google search is solving, how to make it faster, right? Of course, there's some features they keep adding, but essentially it's about getting the right result as fast as possible. And that's what comes down to live, automate. Like most of our dev tool says like, how do we make it faster? And that's a constant R&D. How do we optimize streaming? How do we make it better on both the platforms, desktop, mobile? How do we make it more and more featureful? And that's all of these fall into very R&D. You want more models. You want and who has their own OEM customizations. How do we scale it? They have their own challenges around hosting. There are challenges around like every problem we have solved. We had to figure out sometimes redo it again from scratch because they're just done in a very different way. So I think how do we do it at scale? How do we what thing we do solve by process and documentation? What do we solve by, I think people who have context, what do we solve by enough systems so that we can solve this problem? At least we can see if the old solution works or not. I think we have to probably find out the right balance and constantly figure out how do we get better at it. I think that's a constant challenge always we have to solve. Of course, there are more traditional application challenges as well, like, okay, Node.js not scaling or Ruby on Rails not scaling and stuff like that. But I think those are like 10-15% of my problems, thanks to all the other R&D each other team is doing. That probably becomes
I think that's pretty unique to our business. Like what any other company would think about engineering scaling challenges, for us it's like hard. That's 15%. That everyone does it. That's you can Google search and find it. Most of our time and energy goes into solving those unique problems that you probably can't Google search because no one else has that problem, right? So that's pretty much what our day-to-day engineering challenges are, I think.
No, definitely.
And yeah, with some of those tough conversations with engineering managers as well.
I think just an interesting sort of offshoot of that also is, I know recently over the last year and a half to 2 years, we launched many data centers, right? We have 15 data centers now, right, across 12 different cities. What sort of, how did you think about that? Like, suddenly expanding, and we did it so quickly, right? Setting up our infrastructure, our own infrastructure in all these different locations. How did you sort of approach that, like, from an operational perspective?
So I think operationally, I think we could probably figure out from the, like some of the things we've done in the past, we could probably spend a lot of time figuring out what all we did and how we can structure it and make it more, how do we plan it much better? I think that's the thing engineering could do really well, figure out our logistics and all those things. I think the push comes to shove is always from the product guys. Okay, we want to data center. This is what customer want. I don't know, figure it out. I think that's probably I think if the product team would not be pushing us, we would not be doing 3 data centers, like say 5 or 6 a year. But I think it constantly comes down to having that clarity again on the metric side. Okay, guys, this is the latency customer is expecting. We want to go less than 20 ms for all our customers, right? What that means is, okay, 3 data centers needs to be set up in this year for mobile, or maybe 3 for desktop. And I think then the teams probably figure out how do we, like, and it just push to the engineering. Okay, guys, figure it. Let's learn from our past. Let's create a very, use Confluence very aggressive, about it, Confluence very, very religiously. So we have documentation from the past, how we solved in the past. Let's structure it better. Let's figure out how we can plan it in a way that we could probably deliver it. I think that's probably helped us a lot. I think given that we had to replicate one setup in another place, so some of the things are similar. I think some challenges, of course, turn out always engineering, always surprise. Okay, we were not able to procure something. Now, because of COVID, we are not getting Apple devices and things like that. So I think, so there are new challenges in each setup, but some principles do apply. So I think that probably helped us a lot.
So I think engineering did a great job. Like they came up with like, hey, what are our processes? What are the must-have to build a new data center? Like, what are the unit economics? Like, what do we need operationally on the ground to probably get it up and running? I think it was amazing, the sheer amount of like thoroughness they had. The only thing I have to push them, hey, look, can we execute this in parallel?
Yeah.
Right. So we just can't do them like one by one. I think we just need to get them faster.
Yeah, I remember that 5 to 6 month period where it was just like, one after the other coming online. It was amazing. Yeah, it's great. Awesome. So I think we just sort of maybe 5 to 10 minutes left, and then we'll take questions. So I wanted to sort of end with maybe a little bit about what has sort of been like a couple of unifying threads for both of you, right? Like as you've built BrowserStack, some of the principles which you've talked about already, but maybe you can summarize and say, okay, these are like 4 or 5 things that I found held true throughout the journey as we started, and now we've scaled. And then we can sort of move on to questions, Q&A. Yeah.
So I'll start first. I think one thing I think we both probably would we kind of like really like, which is solving real problems. I think what really gives me a kick or motivates me is, am I learning and I'm solving problems on a daily basis, right? So then I think customer obsession. I think third, I would say like dream big, right? If the way I look into my life, hey, if some things I can do, that's given. I don't want to do this. Like I want to probably challenge myself and probably dream about something doing bigger. And The fourth one, I would say, like, take risk. I think what's the fun in life if you don't take risk, right? So those are the things, and I think we pretty much align on that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I would just put customer obsession first. I think we have probably, I think in the initial journey, we really went to a large extent to probably really stick to it. I think I've started, I think we had a probably a little slump in between, but I think last few years we have again probably really buckled up on our, because I think that's the thing which makes us really successful. And I think that's the real core principle of listening to your customers, making sure they are having an amazing experience. And I think all our OKRs always align to that. I think said that other things, I think bigger risk, I agree, but sometimes when I have to solve those problems, I don't want to take such risk. Yeah, I think great.
I think that's another thing. Like, so because we come from a developer background, so, and I've probably coded, and I'm more from like an algorithmic, more scientific background of computer science. So I think there is one thing in my mind. I don't believe any problem is not solvable, right? So the amount of comfort I have to walk it into a team of developers and challenge them, hey, how can you not solve this problem? Let me actually solve it for you. I think even now gives me thrill to do that, right? So
we hate it.
Awesome. I think one last sort of question I think that I wanted to end with, right? This is, we recently acquired a company called Percy, right? Which is visual testing, right? Maybe Ritesh, you can talk about, why did we sort of make that decision to acquire, and how does it tie into the larger vision of BrowserStack, and where you see the company heading in the next 3 to 5 years?
Sure. So the way we look into our customers and market, that we make products for developers, and we help them to ship their applications faster and bug free, right? And at the same time making sure they're productive around it, right? So we are constantly thinking about that journey and which are the other areas we can actually invest to make their life easier, right? I think while doing that, we actually bumped about visual testing. So it's quite adjacent to us. So we have the Automate product, which lets you do functional testing at large scale, but there isn't like a solution that exists for the visual testing, because they both belong to the world of UI testing. And I think it's still in early days into visual testing, but I think quite confident that probably next 5 years it will be a big space. And so I think we probably decided we want to be into visual testing, and I think we had a choice: either we build it ourselves or we get a kickstart by acquiring a company. I think, and we found Percy, great team, great product, and I think we thought that, hey, look, that is a product, if we get, probably gives us like a 2 years kickstart, right? And we can actually build over and above that.
Sure.
I think that was the motivation of getting Percy, and I think like pretty excited and happy about it.
Yeah. No, definitely. And where do you see this? Like, I think probably talk a little bit about the vision for BrowserStack, right? Like overall, our vision statement is to be the testing infrastructure for the internet, right? And maybe you can talk a little bit about what that means. Both of you can sort of talk about what that means to you.
Sure. So I think the way we look into how the economy is evolving, right? So we see that in the next 15 years, like more than half of the economy might be a digital economy, right? So, and we think, can we be the testing infrastructure for half of the global economy, right? That's what we want to be. So we are constantly thinking about, hey, what all problems we can solve for developers to make sure they can test more effectively and efficiently. So that's one direction we are thinking for next 5 years. The second one is how we blitzscale, how we make sure like that every application goes to production before it gets tested on BrowserStack, I think.
Sure.
And third one, I think it's a constant battle of like scaling up the organization. Like every scale, as Nakul said, like your communication layer changes. Your motivation, how do you motivate employees? How do you probably work with your team who helped you probably go from 100 to 600, but how do you work with them to take the organization from 600 to 6,000, right? So there is a constant evolution happening at each stage. I think that's going to keep us busy for next few years.
Definitely. Awesome. Great. I think we're done with the questions from there. I think we will go into audience questions now. So just give me a minute. All right, a lot of questions. Okay. Okay, let's take
the easier ones.
I think, okay, so let's start with some engineering questions around engineering. So, Nakul, I think this is around, can BrowserStack start like mentoring the best engineering talent in India? Especially from an entry level. If I'm let's say a college graduate or I'm, my senior year, what are your thoughts around that?
Interesting question, I suppose. I think can we? Definitely yes. I think that we are probably scaled well enough that we could probably help in that direction. I think we'll probably have to think through and come up like how we could probably go about doing it.
And we do internships too. I know.
Yeah, we do internships. We do a lot of freshers hiring, like fresh graduate hiring as well.
I think of course we mentor people, right? So it's all about learning on the job. And I'm pretty confident like almost every engineer who joins us has never even seen these problems before, or even thought about these problems before. So once you join, it's a massive learning curve, and you just learn it while you solve the problem.
Sure. Fair. Okay. So let's talk about a couple of product questions. I think alluding to sort of the early days of BrowserStack, right? When you were building the first product live, right? Were you sort of thinking about it from the perspective of the developer building the application or the user sort of using that application? So the ultimate end user or the developer? Like, what was your process in terms of thinking about it?
I think the first one we built it for ourselves. We were like, it was our own problem. We extensively used the first version ourselves, like because every iteration we would do, we would test it ourselves using BrowserStack.
Sure.
So I think we built it for ourselves, and we were only targeting like ourselves and other people like us. I think the first discussion we had, we wanted to target freelancers only because we were like working from a coffee shop. We wanted similar customers, all of their problems. And I think we realized, of course, we had done our market research, but slowly it expanded into all the businesses and all the bigger companies and stuff. But I think we're targeting developers directly, but not thinking about who is the user persona. The first version was to make sure we dog food enough ourselves.
Yeah, I think the easiest and the powerful is you solve your own problem. Right. Thinking about a larger market needs a lot of understanding of the customers in the market and think about a larger problem.
Fair. Okay. Another question around product is, what's sort of next in the product roadmap? So I think the question is around like things like VR browsers and other kinds of, let's say form factors, right? Like smart TVs. And how are you guys thinking about that?
That's a secret. So I think we as a business right now belong to UI testing, right? So any user interface that gets popular and there is a developer ecosystem around it, we want to make it easier for the developers to build an application for it. That's how we think. So it started with the desktop browsers. It went to mobile. I'm sure there are going to be more of them, and not just one. There might be like multiple of them, right? I think we are evaluating smart TVs, but an important factor for us is like how big the developer ecosystem there is.
Sure. Got it. Okay, this is probably a general question. I think that I think it'd be helpful, both Ritesh and Nakul, if you answer is when you're hiring, how do you think about when you're hiring for different levels, right? Like an entry level person, engineer or product manager to somebody who want to be, let's say, managing teams or leading teams. So what are your frameworks and sort of principles that you use?
I think to some extent, I think we probably spent last couple of years when it started Blitzscaling is coming up with what each level means and what is the expectation of each level. So I think that gives us a very good guidance and clarity. High level principles, I think at the more leadership level, I think alignment becomes the most important thing. Are they aligned with the vision which we think about? Are they aligned with how, I think what kind of people we are and which direction we want to business take to? I think leadership, those things become a lot more important than operational and experience. I think in technology, functional skills, of course, I think makes a huge difference. In engineering, I think I definitely want people who seen some of the R&D problems or solved some sort of R&D, or very passionate about technology, because our problems tend to be very frustrating at times. So they need to be really passionate about technology and excited about solving these problems, then being a very good operators or people managers. I think that's a little bit we are very sure about. I think same thing applies to product function. I know there is similar challenge with DevOps products, right? You have seen some of the hiring challenges. Like people need to be engineers or understand, be able to connect to engineers to be able to solve their problems, right? So technical skills do matter to a good extent. I would say these are the probably high level.
Yeah, I think alignment is really important. I think the way I look into this is people work for their managers, right? It's the manager who have to take care of their people. They have to motivate, they have to align, and they also have to like mentor them, right? So I think those are the aspects I would look into while probably getting a manager.
Sure. Great. Okay. Few questions around sort of sales and business, right? So specifically around sales teams, right? How did you ramp up your sales funnels, right? Like, because you went, I remember we really massively scaled the sales team over a couple of years. So what were some of the challenges you faced while scaling, and how did you think about that funnel for the sales team?
Sure. So I think, to be very honest, I think we're still learning on the sales part. I think our market is so big and there is so much to do that we have like a lot to learn and figure out like how can we become like 10x of where we are right now. Like I think what we have done in the last 2 years is just like an experiment, I said. I think the way we looked into it was, hey, what's working for us? And which part of the market we can have our salespeople aligned, where it becomes easier for them to generate demand and probably get business. I think that's what we did. But as we mature and scale every year, I think we are just kind of getting more science behind it, more metrics behind it. Like right now, I'm actually working towards scaling up the sales organization to the next level. So we are laying down the foundations for that.
Got it. Okay. A little bit about I think pricing strategy, right? Like how did you get your first enterprise customer, right? And how did you think about sort of pricing when it when it sort of applies to enterprise customers, right?
I think pricing is one of my most favorite topics. I've had like business start growing like at a double the velocity, like by just making pricing changes, not just once, multiple times over. I think it needs to be value-based pricing. What effectively a value a customer sees, and would they pay for it if you have a good solution, right? If you work backwards from there, you probably figure it out. And then a lot of A/B testing and experiment. I think we have a strong a growth team, which I work very closely with to probably keep learning about pricing and packaging. But yeah, on the enterprise customer side, to be very honest, the first 10,000 customers, I'm sure there would be a lot of enterprise companies, but they might be just paying us like $20 a year, right? So I have no idea who paid us and who was enterprise and not, but I think if you talk about large enterprise companies, I think we probably would have got some business from them in the first week of us starting, because we were always selling to the developers.
Right.
Like it was our 4th or 5th year. I think we were doing some data analysis, and we realized, hey, look, we have about like 40 active subscriptions just from Microsoft, right? So it's like bottoms up, selling to the developers. So you just get developers from everywhere.
I was surprised to look at like there are developers from Google, there are developers from GitHub, there are developers from one user from Dropbox as well. I was like, holy shit.
So actually we just looked, just before this, Nakul and I were looking into who was our first customer. It's been 9.5 years and they're still using us.
Wow, that's amazing.
Wow. And they actually used our product yesterday. Right? Wow. And it's a digital agency, which is making websites.
Sure. Got it. Okay, one last question. So I think this is about a little bit about product-led growth, right? Versus now we're scaling up marketing and sales also, right? So I think the question is around we sort of had a product-led growth for the first few years, and we sort of took that decision, right? So how do you think about that? Sort of slight change in strategy or DNA maybe a little bit.
I would say like change in DNA. I probably would say it's an evolution of the DNA.
Sure.
Right? So I think product-led growth is not going anywhere. It's getting more and more important day by day. I don't think so that's going to go anywhere, right? But once you look at the market as a whole, there is only a part of a market you can penetrate by product-led growth. In a consumer-facing companies, it's relatively easier. But in a B2B, it's far more difficult to probably do that. I think we are lucky, like we were selling to developers. That's one community that can actually make your product go viral. So we think about how do we continue to invest in product-led growth and probably support it to happen more of it. But additionally, what are the other investments we can do to penetrate the market?
Got it. Good. Okay. Great. I think maybe just one last question for either one of you, right? I think talk a little bit about sort of hiring and sort of what are some of the things sort of active teams that you're hiring for right now at BrowserStack. So I think a lot of folks are interested who are attending. So maybe just talk about some of the broad areas that you're hiring for. Right?
So I think my strategy has changed over the last few months. I think I'm like, we are hiring across the board. You're a good talent, you want to work for us? I have a problem.
Yes.
Like we have so many problems as we are blitzscaling across the board. And I think of course our understanding has also changed on what problems. Earlier we were very, very sure about where we want to hire and this is the kind of talent we need. I think the problems we have seen and we've been exposed to over last year, now I see, okay, you're a good problem solver, you do this really well, I have this problem, yes, right? You probably go and solve this problem. So I think it has in engineering and I'm sure in product and other places as well, I think you're looking for good problem solvers. As I call just problem solver, like you asked for traits earlier. If you're a good problem solver, I have a problem for you.
Yeah, so I think we are hiring all the time. We are hiring in every function. Like as of now, I'm not able to think of a function where we are not hiring.
Sure.
Yes, how much is the question, right? So, and as we are blitzscaling, I think the numbers are just increasing. I think just during the COVID phase itself, I think we have grown the company by like 40%. And I think we'll just keep doing that.
Yeah.
And again, we're looking for people who are problem solvers as well as who are really passionate about what we do.
Sure.
Product, engineering, marketing.
Yeah, everywhere. We're hiring
sales,
yes.
Support, HR.
Awesome. And by the way, I think for all the attendees, we've launched a poll on the webinar. So if you're interested in applying and joining BrowserStack, so please just take a second to answer those questions on the poll. So I think it's just a couple of questions. Awesome. Cool. I think we're done. Just going through the questions one more last time. Let me see. We have a few minutes
just
left.
saying like last question all the time.
Yeah.
We just keep going.
Well, we have a little more time to kill, so I'm just seeing if we have. Okay, let's see. I think this is an interesting question. Would you guys do this differently if you could go back in time? The BrowserStack journey. What would you change? Let's say.
I think definitely differently. Like, probably a lot different than what we did. I don't know, like Nakul can add more to it.
Things,
a lot of things, right? But from my end, I think I'll probably get scale in much earlier.
Yeah, that's the first one.
Yeah, first one. I think for a very long period of time, we were like, hey, we don't want to scale up the organization. Like, and it just hit us back hard. I think doing that probably, that's the number one in my list. I probably would have done much better.
I think the scaling earlier is the first one. I think I would have spoken to a lot more people a lot earlier to like my personal scaling probably happened late and it took a lot of time once I realized I have to do it. And I'd like to probably do two of those things. And of course, I think a lot of other things will follow automatically and stuff.
I think the other thing I would say, like, it's something close to my heart, I guess. I think we had a great team in the beginning, right? We have few of them, but not all of them, right? If I have to do it differently, I'll do everything to retain all of them.
That's a great point. Yeah. Awesome. Great. Okay. This is really the end. I think now. Cool. So I think, folks, now we're going to sort of do a breakout session. So we'll have leaders from sales, marketing, product, engineering doing individual breakout sessions. So the team is sharing a link on the chat, which will have individual Zoom URLs to these breakout sessions. So just give us a few minutes to get going on those sessions. Just open up those that PDF with all the links, and you can join those links. So we just leave it up, leave the session running for the next 2-3 minutes, and then we will be handling those breakout sessions. So if you have more questions around specific functions, engineering, product, marketing, and sales, please do join, and we will have leaders from all of these organizations there to answer all your questions. Great. Awesome. Thanks a lot, Ritesh. Thanks a lot, Nakul. I think it was great. I think for somebody who's been at BrowserStack to hear these stories, and sort of get it from your perspective, the inside scoop of building scaling BrowserStack. So thank you. Thanks a lot.
No, thanks, Praveen. Thanks everyone. Thanks the entire team, and thanks everyone for joining. Yes.
Awesome. Thanks, folks. This is us signing off.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.